All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's PIL BITE 30-minute webinar covering brief insights on trending efficiencies.
Today, we will be sharing a newly tested procurement innovation technique called Try Before You Buy. And we'll also include a quick update on the revolutionary FAR overhaul.
All right, and everyone out there, we want to ensure you get credit for today. So please be sure to add your name and email to the chat, just like everyone else is doing now. Now, we also have a special guest with us today, and to share the story about this technique is Erin Lush, Contracting Officer from the General Services Administration. Erin, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, hi, thank you, and good morning to everybody in the DHS world.
All right, and from here at the PIL, we have Sandra Oliver Schmidt, our PIL Director, and I am David Jablonski, the PIL's Customer Engagement Lead.
We also have a few special guests from Erin's leadership who will be joining us, so if you see them in the chat, be sure to say hello. Now, on to today's topics. We will be covering what the Try Before You Buy technique is, how it was used, and how it significantly decreased risk and saved time for the government. We will also be providing the first of many updates on the revolutionary FAR overhaul and how to find more information about how it will affect the way we do business.
Can't wait to hear about that. But we have an important message today from our DHS Chief Procurement Officer, Paul Courtney, and he says innovation in procurement can simply be about leveraging common sense practices to achieve better results. So keep that in mind as we learn about this awesome technique from Erin.
Thanks for that, David. Now, I keep thinking about tech demos versus Try Before You Buy, because, tech demos, there are some things in life where maybe, if I want to buy a car, of course I'll go and test drive 5 cars. But let's say, if I want an app that helps me maybe track my food, and I want to know, well, does this app, if I take a picture of my food, will it properly capture it? I don't want to try 5 apps, right? I'd rather just give me the one, give me 30 days to try it, and then I'll just buy the subscription. Can you think of anything else where that might be the case?
Oh, like I want to get video streaming. And I can try something out for 7 days before I have to commit to it. Make sure, is it truly what I want, or am I willing to risk that $100 a month for it?
True, that's a good point. So with that, we're going to dive into today's content. So Erin, welcome to today's PIL Bite. Thank you so much for joining us from GSA to share this important innovation with the DHS acquisition workforce. Could you please provide an overview of what the Try Before You Buy technique is?
Okay, well, thank you very much, and good morning. First, I want to say that this technique was created by GSA Program Management Office personnel, Allison Hopkins, with myself utilizing the acquisition procedures to make the Try Before You Buy happen. This technique is used after the evaluation has been concluded and after the discussions and trade-offs are complete. So this is done immediately prior to making the award and the final award decision, and this step allows the government the ability to test and verify the solution before we enter into awarding and obligating the contract.
Okay, now we're going to dive into the bottom of the slide to kind of discuss where in the obtain phase this technique is used. So we're using luggage. You'll find out why we use luggage here in a minute. But starting on the left-hand side of the screen, the red suitcase represents the evaluation. So let's assume up to this point, the solicitation has already been released, proposals have already been received, and it's now time to conduct the technical evaluation and the price evaluation. Erin, I think, was that a 1-phase or 2-phase for the actual technical and price evaluation for this procurement?
Our procurement actually utilized 2 phases. The first phase was the price and the technical evaluation, and then the second phase was demonstrations of the managed shared service and technology product.
Oh, interesting. So your evaluation, where the red suitcase is, actually included a technical demonstration. I just want to make sure our audience catches that. The evaluation already included that. Okay, which means the vendor showed you how, in this case, an IT system, they showed you how it would work.
Yes, they also demonstrated their ability to provide a managed shared service solution.
Okay. I think those of you in the audience, can you let us know in the chat, do you have experience with using technical demonstrations and oral presentations in your procurement? I recognize a lot of names out there, so I'm willing to bet there are quite a few who've used tech demos and oral presentations, just like Erin did. But today, we're actually talking about a technique that occurs after evaluation. So let's move on to the green suitcase. When you get there, this is when your team did the initial trade-off decision. So evaluations are complete. Your team wrote an initial trade-off decision between technical and price. It was after that with the yellow suitcase, this is where the try before you buy comes in. Now, may I ask Erin, the try before you buy, the yellow suitcase, how many systems or how many things were you trying before buying them in this instance?
Well, in this instance, because we've already concluded the evaluation, we wrote into our solicitation procedures that we would announce one apparent awardee, which would be the solution that is the highest rated, best overall value for the government. And we're only going to test one solution, which is the apparent awardee. Vendors have not been eliminated from the competitive range at this point, but we are just testing the solution of the highest rated vendor.
Fantastic. So then after using the try before you buy technique to test this best suited vendor system, after that we moved on to the green suitcase where your team wrote the final award decision and after that made award. Now, real briefly, Erin, can you share with our audience what makes the try before you buy technique different from the technical demonstrations you used under the red suitcase under the evaluation phase?
Okay, so the difference is in the technical demonstration phase, the proposed offerers, they actually demonstrated their solution and they were in control of what the vendor or what the government sees. When you shift gears to the try before you buy, and once we make the apparent awardee notification, the government then takes control of that system and we actually get to test the solution out with our government testers to verify that what they demonstrated actually works.
I like this. You know, I can already think of a way I could use this with buying a car. So under the red suitcase with evaluation, maybe I test drive 5 of them.
Yeah.
Real brief, real quick, get to try it. But then try before you buy. Hey, car company, how about you just give me the car for a month or 2 months or 3 months to try out? And if I like it, then maybe at the end of 3 months I'll try it. I don't know. Do you think anyone would be willing to let me do that?
I think there's some options out there, yes.
Okay. Well, let's move on to we're not buying cars in this instance, so we are going to move on to briefly discuss what was in the solicitation. So could you please share, Erin, briefly, we're at the top of this slide. Can you share what it was you were buying, what your IGCE was, and what FAR part you were using?
Yes, so GSA was in charge with ensuring that a travel solution is present for all federal civilian agencies. So this procurement was a single award to obtain a travel and expense technology managed service solution. In addition to that, the managed service solution also comes with an online booking tool which provides the actual travel and expense system to allow us to travel for all federal government and civilian agencies. So the contractor provided the products, the services, the management, the supervision, the labor, and the materials necessary to make travel and expense successful for all federal civilian agencies.
And a lot of federal agencies use the travel system, I understand. So that's a lot of stakeholders.
Yeah, a lot of stakeholders. So the awarded vendor, it ended up being about a $900 million solution, so about $1 billion. And we utilized the FAR Part 15 negotiations, specifically with FAR Part 15.3 source selection.
All right, thank you for that. So FAR Part 3, 15.3 source selection, $1 billion. Now, at the bottom of the page, listing 1 through 5, these are the actual solicitation procedures that your team created in order to use this technique, because this technique, try before you buy, is not found in the FAR, nor is it prohibited. And while the FAR is being overhauled, FAR Part 1 rewrite has been released, so everyone take a look at that when you have a chance. We'll share that link later. But Erin, could you please explain to our audience specifically what procedures did you place in your solicitation in order to use the try before you buy technique?
Yeah, so if you notice numbers 1 and 2, those items are actually present in the FAR under FAR Part 15. So we utilized the FAR to evaluate technical and price. We then went into discussions and completed an initial trade-off decision. But what is not present in the FAR that we utilize to enhance our ability to provide a best overall solution is that we wrote into the solicitation under Section M, Evaluations, that the government will announce the apparent awardee to the remaining vendors. So all the vendors knew that a apparent awardee was announced. And then that apparent awardee would then have their solution tested. So the government verified and tested the apparent awardee solution. And if the solution was successful, then we would go into award and eliminate the rest of the vendors from the competitive range. However, if the solution was not successful, the solicitation allowed us to be able to eliminate that unsuccessful solution and go to the next vendor that had the best overall solution and then test their solution if the first one was not successful. So then we would repeat it until we got the best overall solution. But our first vendor, that was the apparent awardee, their solution did pass, so we were able to make award.
Wow, so the apparent awardee solution did pass because you use this technique to test and verify the system, but I like that these procedures kept your options open just in case it didn't. There are so many instances where maybe we get to the end of a procurement and the solutions just aren't there. They're not working the way we thought they would, and we have to start over. And we think, gosh, if only we could have just awarded to the next best suited vendor. If only those procedures were in our solicitation. I would offer one maybe possibly could put these procedures in their solicitation in a brief format just to have the option there just in case. I like that, Erin. Now, can you please share, this is a very new technique. It was created by your team. Can you share, how did you ensure vendors fully understood this technique and really fully understood what this test verification would look like while these procedures were written into the solicitation?
Well, that's a great question. So one thing that GSA did was we involved the vendors and the industry throughout the entire market research and solicitation process. So we performed market research for about 2 years and included all industry stakeholders to make sure that our commercial practice solution was viable. Then we went into a pre-solicitation where we actually posted the pre-solicitation on sam.gov and allowed the industry to provide comments back to make sure that our solicitation was in line with commercial practices and procedures. From there, we've released the official solicitation and held a pre-solicitation conference, which then gave the industry opportunities to see what the official solicitation looked like, what the procedures for evaluation looked like, and then provide feedback on the solicitation via questions. And then we also met with the vendors that were interested in the solution one-on-one to make sure that they understood the solicitation and what was required of them before they proposed and submitted an offer.
Now, many of the pre-solicitation communications and market research techniques that Erin has just described can be found on the periodic table of acquisition innovations. And on the bottom center of the page, in the PIL links box, you can find the link to the periodic table of acquisition innovations to learn how you can also use these highly interactive market research techniques for your procurement. Now, Jennifer Caston,
Correct.
She is a procurement innovation champion and she is a DHS DigiBadge holder. She asks, if verification was not successful, would those vendors likely protest? Well, Erin, you just said the best suited vendor did win. Did the other vendors protest in this instance?
So for almost $1 billion procurement, we received 0 protests. And that is because we communicated with the industry throughout. We provided notification letters. Anytime a industry had a question, we responded to all the vendors to make sure that all vendors had fair opportunity and the same information across the board. And then, like I said, we made sure that we gave the industry input with our pre-solicitation to make sure that these procedures would align with what they would be willing to do with commercial practices.
So it sounds like all the interactions you had with vendors prior to releasing the solicitation, which was not over email, by the way, you spoke with a lot of vendors. It sounds like that may have helped mitigate the risk of a protest. Related to this question, Ray Kraft asked a good question. Yeah, so the remaining vendors are on standby mode until an official award is made. And are they usually good with that? So, right, the answer is yes, they are essentially on standby, is my understanding. And Aaron, were they okay with that?
Actually, yes, they were. So we did put them technically on standby mode, meaning we did not eliminate vendors from the competitive range. They were still able to be within the solicitation procedures. So what we did was we made very clear that we would have a certain time period for which we would test the apparent awardee. And if that solution is unsuccessful and we go to the next vendor, that actually gives the second in line vendor more opportunity to prepare for testing. So it actually works out in the benefit that the remaining vendors have additional time to prepare.
Good point. I hadn't thought of that. They have more time to prepare just in case they get called up.
Just in case.
There's a baseball analogy in there somewhere, but I'm not a sports person.
On deck.
Oh, there we go. There we go. On deck. All right.
They're on deck.
Moving on to our next slide, just real quick. We have a lot of users who mentioned earlier, yes, they had used technical demos. So I'm just wondering, even if you use try before you buy, why not test all the vendor system at this point, like right before award? What was your reason with testing only one vendor system?
Well, I mean, for first, it is a very high cost to test a solution. So our try before you buy solution verification process included about 30 government subject matter experts across all federal civilian agencies.
Wow.
We asked subject matter experts for travel and expense, the folks that utilize the system at a high level. We asked them to test the solution to gain stakeholder buy-in. So coordinating over 30 testers times however many solutions, which usually takes about 30 days, because there's about 15 days of preparatory work that the government has to do. And then the solution, the try before you buy, takes about 10 days, 10 business days to test. So that's a lot of time and a lot of cost for the government. And then it would extend the PIL by several months if we had to test all solutions.
That's a good explanation. So a lot of time, a lot of government subject matter experts involved in the test, in this case anyway, because it was a government-wide contract, but you managed your risk, and it sounds like in managing risk, this was successful for your team. I could even think of a scenario where one could use this technique and not use tech demos during evaluation. That could also save a lot of time. So anyone out there who's interested in getting creative with the use of this technique to use this in lieu of tech demos, please give the PIL a call. We'd be happy to provide top cover as you step into the lab to try that. Now, real quick, it is time for a quick break to hear more about the revolutionary FAR overhaul.
That's right, Sandra. And just like we're trying something here that wasn't in the FAR, a lot of stuff is going to be taken out of the FAR soon here. Revolutionary FAR overhaul, Executive Order 14275, issued April 15, 2025, for restoring common sense to federal procurement. First ever comprehensive overhaul of the FAR. It's being led by the Office of Federal Procurement Policy and the FAR Council. And this is going to return the federal acquisition regulations to its statutory roots and basically have non-regulatory binding guides to help guide it, and rather than having it all in the FAR itself. So be sure to check out acquisition.gov FAR overhaul for all of the latest updates to the FAR as they roll out in an agile methodology. And be sure to check out PIL trainings as well. We have trainings that are coming out. Check our PIL DHS Connect page, and we have a PIL Bite in 2 weeks here, actually.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you for that, David.
Not a problem.
All right.
Back to you.
Getting back to try before you buy. So now we're stepping into, well, what did the testing actually look like? We already know there were 10 days of testing. And Eric, we're getting to your question right now. Eric asked how much detail about the try testing plan was included in the solicitation. And my understanding is all of it. Because here at the top right box is just a small excerpt of the testing procedures that were in the solicitation. So this small excerpt here says, hey, we have attachment with J15 sample test case, and that had the full list of scenarios that the government testers were going to test. So procedures are in the solicitation. We're now at this point on our slide where let's assume that the trade-off has been completed. We're testing the best suited vendors IT system, if you will. And we now know that they now understand how they're going to be tested. That was in the solicitation. So now, Aaron, we have 10 minutes left in our webinar. Could you maybe just in the next minute, just really quickly discuss what did a typical test day look like for your government testers?
Okay, so since this was, the apparent awardee and they are the highest rated vendor, which is why that's why we have one particular vendor for Arthur's response, we invited the apparent awardee to participate in 10 business days worth of testing. So at the beginning of the day, the government would meet with the vendor and we would give them an opportunity to tell them what test cases we are testing for the day, which we had several hundred test cases that we tested throughout the 10 days of testing. And then once we were done with the daily kickoff, we released the vendor, and then the testers, about 30 of them, began testing the system with the various scenarios. Yes, we gave them example test case of what to use, and we also told them what we would be testing in our requirements traceability matrix. So then they would test the system all day, and at the end of the day, we would meet back with the apparent awardee, and we would let them know what passed and what failed, which gives them an opportunity to provide fixes for retests.
I love that. Now let's talk about what happened when a government tester found a failure in the system. What did they do?
So we utilized a program with our business license, and again, this is just the license that we purchased. Your agency may have a different procurement for a desktop recording tool, but ours, we had a license with Snagit. So if we had a test case or a requirement that failed, the tester would meet with the Technical Evaluation Board chair and myself as the CO or my core. We would go into a room, and then the tester would recreate the failure while we recorded said failure. So once we recorded the failure as they see it on video, we would then immediately share the video with the apparent awardee and give them an opportunity to fix the failure. So some failures can be fixed within the same day. Some failures may need a couple more days, and sometimes the vendor can't fix the failure and it's a true failure. So if we did have a vendor fix the failure, we would then retest the video. So we would bring the same tester in, the same recording, and we would retest what the vendor fixed, which allowed us to prove that it in fact passed. Now if it still failed, we would send the video back to the vendor again and tell them, hey, it still failed. Either fix it or confirm that it is a true failure.
I like the idea of this desktop recording app, taking a video recording of the failure. That sounds so much faster than trying to write down and describe the failure. It's as bad as calling my cable company when my cable goes out. I already tell them the whole selection of buttons I pressed, and they just don't understand. If I could just give them a video of what I've done, I feel like it would be so much faster. Now, in discussing other benefits, Abe does have a question. Was the product provided by the vendor for free for the government to test for those 10 days?
Yes, that is correct. They provided the product that met all of the requirements that are listed at evaluation. So when we had our requirements matrix, there were thousands of test cases to test for, but we only tested the couple hundred that are listed at evaluation to make sure that we have a baseline product that works.
It sounds like they provided a login, so they were able to log into the system to test the system.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. And next question before we leave this page, where is it? Did you have to extend the 10 days of testing given the failures?
No. So the testing is 10 business days in accordance with the solicitation procedures. If we still had failures, we had an actual next step that will be addressed on the next slide on how we took care of failures that did not get fixed.
Well, now we've heard of some of the benefits of video recording the failures. Let's talk about how exactly did you deal with and rate the failures when you retested and they failed again. We have about 2 minutes for this one.
Okay, so in the solicitation under the evaluation and verification process, the try before you buy, we actually gave all industry this chart right here, which gave several levels of defects. And once we had a failure and we determined that it is a true failure and the vendor could not fix it, the Technical Evaluation Board would re-meet and decide what defect level of the failure they're going to rate it as. So if it's a pass, it doesn't go to the Technical Evaluation Board. It's passed. If it's low, it means there are some defects, but the software is still usable, and we are going to allow the vendor to keep going without a mitigation plan. But under the medium and high, there are failures that are assigned defect levels of medium and high that we have requested the vendor to provide a mitigation plan. And that mitigation plan tells us how they're going to fix it, when they're going to fix it, and then we incorporate this mitigation corrective action plan into the contract award itself to manage risk and make sure that the vendor actually delivers upon their failures that they promised to fix. Now, if it's a critical failure, we won't make award.
Okay, so your hard line is critical. If it's a critical failure, that's it. No award is made. But if it's a high or a medium level defect, the company, the vendor can simply create a mitigation plan, and that gets incorporated into the award. Well, I'd like to ask, if you can answer just 30 seconds, why would you be okay with the mitigation plan for the high and medium versus making sure everything passes perfectly?
Well, we have thousands of requirements that are listed at evaluation, and then we also have stuff at initial operating capability and full operating capability. So that's when we add a whole bunch of federal civilian agencies to our solution. So out of thousands of requirements traceabilities, and we tested hundreds of them, we had a pass rate of 95%, and we only had 18 items that needed to be fixed.
Okay. So that this is kind of right sizing your risk and your PULT and your timing. I like that. So have them quickly write up that mitigation plan, incorporate into the award. We do have a few questions before we wrap up here. David, which question would you start with?
Would this technique work for solutions that require ETO after award?
Ooh,
Probably.
yes. I would think so. Yeah.
So we actually, in our solution, we do require ATO after award. So it does work for solutions that still need to go through the FedRAMP process and still need ATO.
There you go. After testing, was the product returned to the vendor? Well, I think you bought the product, right? So you got the testing, you tested it, and then you bought it at the end.
Yes. So if the solution failed, then yes, we would return the product back to the vendor and go to the next vendor. But since this vendor passed, we now have that solution.
Okay.
Last one here. Were your testers subject matter experts in video?
Like they have to appear in the video when the desktop is being recorded.
No, we did not record any testers. We only recorded the screen share and only the system with the failures and the clicks. And then the subject matter experts needed to be experts in travel and expense, not video production.
Here's one from Jennifer. Did you actually try it out in the real environment using real data?
We did. We use it in the production environment.
Perfect.
Okay.
There you go.
Wow. Very cool.
Because it is a commercial solution. So it was a commercial product that we were testing.
Very cool. Well, thank you. Those were fantastic questions. So we have about a minute left. So Erin, could you please share your final takeaways for our participants today as they use the try before you buy technique?
Okay, so this is a list of the big takeaways that are key for a successful procurement. One of the biggest things is vendor buy-in. When you have the market research and pre-solicitation and industry planning, make sure you get buy-in from your vendors on a commercial solution, because if it's not a commercial solution, or if you're using a commercial solution, you need to make sure it aligns with commercial practices. Another thing is that the contracting officer should really have a good relationship with the program office, because they're the ones that are going to provide the subject matter expertise in making sure that the testers are aligned appropriately to the solution. And then the other thing is if you want to have stakeholder investment, have them as testers. Make sure you bring in your customer throughout the entire process, because it gains buy-in and it allows for meaningful evaluation and time savings. The other thing is contracting officer, as everyone knows, we have to be highly organized. We need to keep the vendors informed throughout the process. And then the other thing I highly recommend is, as the contracting officer, you should really be present in part of the technical evaluation, the demonstrations, and the try before you buy, to make sure that the technical team is evaluating in accordance with the solicitation evaluation procedures.
Those are fantastic takeaways, Erin. Thank you so much for taking time away from GSA to share this new technique with the DHS acquisition workforce. I can absolutely see utility, or perhaps using try before you buy in lieu of technical demonstrations might be a possibility. For everyone out there, please remember to take our PIL BITE survey to help us improve. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next PIL BITE. And Erin, thanks again for being here. Bye, everyone.
One last